So to everyone joining us online and to everyone who has made the time to be here in person as well, Pearl, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Buena, Site, Seba, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone who's joining us online. As I always say, I know that everyone could have chosen to be anywhere else in the world right now, doing anything else. So I really appreciate you guys putting the time aside to be here. Because, I know it obviously means that you do care a lot about the topic and about just helping MUSE to, do what it can to address this issue of gender-based violence. So how today's session is going to work is we have 3 speakers here for us today. We have Buena Moloto, who you will see later on camera. And then we have Tafara Mkombe and we have Rob Bendele, who will be representing the policymaking and the technology sectors. And we are going to start with Tafara. I'm going to give him the space to go ahead first to talk to us. He will introduce himself. I thought of doing the introductions myself, but I feel like, who better to introduce themselves than them themselves. So I'm going to give them the space to do that. And then they are going to be talking to us for a few minutes. And then at the end of the session, I would love for us to have another conversational session real quick. In the last session, there were a few things that came up that I said, if a few things do come up after the session, just jot it down and we can discuss it a bit further this week. Or if something comes up whilst people are talking, whilst, things are being said, or if, your mind, if you come up with something as the session is going, definitely just jot that down as well. And then we can discuss it at the end of the session, just for a few minutes with the time that we have. But yeah, I think without further ado, let's go ahead with that. Tafara, please, can you go ahead for us? Thank you.
All right, just testing to see that everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, brilliant. I just want to make sure that on my side, all the technical things are in order. That seems to be the case. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to reiterate Tabi's words and, give a really heartfelt, warm thank you to all of you who have first and foremost joined us online, but also those of you who have managed to join in person at the venue that Tabi is at. I think she's already pretty much said everything, but I just want to really emphasize the point that all of us could have been elsewhere, but we decided to be here today to share the space together, to learn from one another, to inspire one another as well, and to see what kind of future we can create as the youth of South Africa. And so I really do just want to thank all of you for taking the time to actually just be here with us today. Insofar as who I am and what I believe my purpose being here today is, I am a final year student at the University of Cape Town. I'm studying a business science, specializing in finance and accounting. My passions lie with entrepreneurship, as well as with people, and the idea that one can create what it is that they want to create. That creation side of me has definitely played itself out in the entrepreneurship spectrum. But not just that, I also make music, and I've got an album that I would like to release this year. And so the creation side has also come through there. And yeah, I think my purpose today is actually just to have a chat with all of you about Masidi, what the journey has been like, what it's about first and foremost, then what was the journey getting to this point where we are now, and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. So to start off, Masidi is an interactive safety application that seeks to deal with the problem of gender-based violence faced by women in South Africa through the simple use of a button on an app. Funny enough, I actually read through one of our speakers' startup articles on Startup Mag, Rob Bendele, and I really just resonated with it because it's exactly the same thought has gone into what he's done. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing some of his insights as well. And so, yeah, back to what Masidi is about. We aim to solve the problem of gender-based violence through creating a community that can empower women to take back their safety. That is our tagline, and the way that we have aimed to do this is, yes, through the use of a safety application, a safety button built into the application that allows users to be in contact with nearby authorities in the way that Uber would function. But not just that, we also have a community platform where users can take part in community events with a lot of our partnered organizations such as Rape Crisis, Power, Angisonang, and we would also really just love to to be able to create a space where users can interact with these women's-based organizations, to take part in their events, become counselors, and feel as though they are part of this problem that we are facing, which is gender-based violence in South Africa. Now, that is where we are right now. That is exactly what the goal has been for the last, now 2022. So that's what the goal has been like for the last 4 years. And the reason I want to disclose that is actually because there's something I want to highlight as a result of the time it's taken to get to this point. Where we are now is in the app development phase, and it's taken us 4 years to develop an app. Something that has obviously been very close to all of our hearts, hence why we've been at it for 4 years. And I think the thing that I really want to highlight by that is the fact that you might have a dream, you might have a goal, you might have an aspiration, something that you feel is worth value. And sometimes it might take a long time to get to the point that you want to get to. But the important thing is to keep going. The important thing is to continue to push, because, and I had this conversation with a really good friend of mine, what you have on your heart, what you have in your mind, what it is that you wish to create and bring forth is now bigger than you. And that is actually what has been my main my main motivation, is that this app is actually bigger than me. It's bigger than the Masidi team. It actually is meant for the people to whom it wishes to protect. Those are the people that need it, and they are desperately waiting for something like this to come into their hands. And so obviously, yes, it has taken us 4 years to get to this point, but it's definitely been 4 years of time well spent. It's definitely been 4 years of reflection, 4 years of learning as young and upcoming entrepreneurs in South Africa who wish to make a difference. And I think it's important for all of us today to remember that. Although your dream might be deferred, as it were, it's definitely not delayed, and it's definitely not wasted. It's just time for you to learn, reflect, recuperate, and make sure that you give of your best when it comes to providing solutions. Some of the lessons that I've learned along the way are definitely what I've just started off with. But over and above that is the power of networking, the power of being able to allow other people to help you, allow other people to guide you. As young entrepreneurs, I definitely felt like I had to have all the answers. I definitely felt like, because this dream was placed on my heart as well as the heart of my team members, we had to know exactly how to execute it and get it done. Whereas the reality was quite different. I actually learned that I needed to ask for help, especially where I was not able to understand things, especially where there were certain systems where I perhaps was not entirely aware of how they functioned. As well as just asking for help in terms of how to conduct myself as an entrepreneur, especially when things get tough, because they do get tough, and that is the nature of the game. Sometimes you find yourself in a position where you wonder, is this the right path? Is this exactly what it is I'm supposed to be doing? Have I made the right decisions? And it's moments like that where you need people around you to guide you, to ask for advice and help from. In terms of just how to chart the way forward. So yeah, without taking up too much more, without taking up much more time, just to reiterate some of the main points from my opening discussion today. I'm a young university student who has spent 4 years with his team working on an idea that he believes is worth something in the South African context, but not just the South African context, the global context. And over and above that, I've spent so much time being able to learn and reflect, not because I felt like my dream was delayed, but just because I felt like my dream was deferred. And that is the key. The dream was not delayed, the dream was deferred. And it was through that time I was able to learn, reflect, recuperate, and be able to address the problem head on with new knowledge from the guidance that I was able to receive from those who know more and those who have gone before. And again, I just really want to take the time to say thank you to all of you for making the time. It's been a pleasure, and I really look forward to engaging with all of you further. Thank you. Tabi, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Tafara. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom from your own journey with this whole, doing something as a young person in South Africa about gender-based violence. I can attest to the fact that Tafara has been working on this for years. I remember when I first heard about Masidi, it was a long time ago. So I can definitely attest to the fact that it takes time. It takes understanding what your intention behind it is, and just keeping that as the focus. So thank you so much for your words of wisdom in terms of just what you've learned and just what we can learn. I think especially what I've taken a lot from what you said is ask for help. I think especially as young people, like it's so easy for us to give up because it became hard, or because we didn't have access to this person, or because we didn't have access to these funds, or whatever it is. But as young people, that shouldn't stop us. Ask for help wherever you can and work together, come together. There've been even just the people in this room. The fact that we've even come together at all, is power in itself. The people across the screen is power in itself. So thank you, Tafara. Next, we have Rob Bendele, who will be speaking to us. I will hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tabi. Much appreciated. Hello to everyone. And Tafara, I just want to start off by saying that was incredible, man. You speak amazingly, very bright. I wish I'd met you before this. I think we could have done a lot of beautiful work together. And well done on what you're doing, man. Really impressive. And I'd really like to see your system and check it out properly. Just a quick summary on who I am. It's Rob Bendele, Zulu Austrian, born and bred in the heart of Zululand, hence so for the Americans, you want to understand it. But yes, I'm a very proud Austrian Zulu, and my story begins really Emakaya, as far down as you can possibly go, rural areas where we would be lucky even to find a job when we grow up. So, I had huge aspirations in life. I wanted to become something in life, and I really did have to work very hard for it. My real big break in life was in 2019. I was put on Survivor South Africa, and I went onto the show and was blessed enough to actually win it, which then allowed me something very important, was just contacts, access to people who previously would never look at me twice. And I always knew I wanted to do something big with my life. I wanted to do something that changes the country or potentially even the world. And a big place to start was security. We have huge security issues in this country. Gender-based violence is just out of control. And it's considered to be our second pandemic. Our president called it that. Now, I'm not a scientist, so I wasn't even going to tackle COVID, but I thought I could do something about security. So this idea came to me about 1.5 years ago, of using live streaming technology, incorporating that into a security system. And I thought, no, it must exist somewhere in this world. There must be something like this. And the more we looked, the more we realized it's not there. So when I finally figured out exactly how the system must work, we lodged an international patent on it, and sure enough, it got approved. And we got building June of last year. And this is what we came up with. I think I'll just quickly show you guys. I'll just run through Iris quickly, and just to give you a bit of visuals so you do understand it a little bit better. It shouldn't be too long. Slideshow from the beginning. So our vision and mission from day one was to use this technology to protect the vulnerable individuals amongst us, which is primarily women, children, the LGBT plus community, even people living with albinism. What's happening to them as a country right now is nothing short of a hate crime. And the problem in general is that South Africans don't feel safe. The more we started working on this technology, the more we realized that it's not just for them, it's for everyone. We got horrible crime stats here, literally the highest in the world, 66,000 reported rape cases annually. When we started this journey last year, it was at 50,000. So the numbers are only going up. So we realized, let's find a solution. The first thing I did was to ask the people on the ground who are going through this, what the problem is and how we can fix this. So we created an online survey, which obviously leads you down different paths depending on what you answer. So we separate men, women, etc., ask different questions accordingly. And eventually people obviously would say, yes, they have been assaulted in one form or another. And the very interesting feedback we got there, the most important one was, why did you not report it to the police? And almost half of them said was they did not have evidence. Now, the big problem in these things is the lack of evidence. So we realized that's the right place to start. So we decided, let's create something which can live stream the evidence. So Iris has 4 main states: green, as we all know, safe and sound; amber, which is activated simply by shaking your phone. You just have to shake your phone. What it then does is it switches on the microphone and starts live streaming it to a secure cloud in real time. Again, the moment it happens, the evidence has already left your phone. It's not being localized. Now, this is ideal for situations where you're in an Uber, you're getting uncomfortable, this guy's talking to you funny, or a cop is pulling you over, you're worried about being extorted for a bribe, or even those instances where your partner comes home, they've been drinking, you can see this person is in a mood to potentially start hitting you. Verbal abuse, sexual harassment in the workplace, audio evidence is good enough to prosecute. You simply shake your phone, at the very least you have audio evidence of what happened to you. However, if the situation escalates, you push it iris to red. What red then does is switches on your camera and starts streaming video evidence to the cloud in real time. Again, the second it happens, the evidence has already left your phone. And this would even work in countries like America. We know what the cops are doing to people when they're pulling them over. Any volatile situation, once iris is on red, it starts live streaming, but it doesn't just stop there. With the live stream, at the click of one button, it also then alerts your pre-assigned guardians, telling them that you are in trouble. It also reveals your location. The guardians are able to see in real time exactly what is happening to you as if they were in the room with you. So the evidence is going out, not just to the clouds, but to your guardian, and your location is being shared. This is enough to potentially deter any perpetrator. Only an idiot will continue the assault under the circumstances. However, if this doesn't deter someone, you can push it one more level, which is blue. Blue continues the live stream to the cloud and your guardians in real time, but now it also dispatches private security. We've got 5,600 boots on the ground in South Africa that respond to this call. Think of it as the Uber of private security. It gives you an average response time of 5 to 8 minutes. So once you press this button, there's no having to phone to explain where you are. The private security is en route to your location. Again, the evidence is continuing to live stream. The key is the evidence, because that is what will prosecute and put these people behind bars. And it cannot be destroyed because it's really left the phone. There was already a lot, but we decided we want to close every single possible gap. So scenarios of women being roofied do exist out there, and they happen more often than you would think. So we created something called a safety check-in. A safety check-in is you telling Iris that during these hours, for example, Friday night, I will be out and about with the ladies between 10 and 2 o'clock in the morning. You then tell Iris to check in on you at your certain intervals, maybe 15 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours. You decide how safe you feel. And what then the algorithm then does is it sure enough checks in on you at those frequencies. Now, if you don't put your code in to confirm that it's you and you are safe, the algorithm picks up that potentially something's wrong with you. It'll first start with your guardians. Hey, so-and-so is not answering their check-in on them. You try calling, you can't get a hold of them. Something is potentially wrong. Iris will then reveal the location to tell your guardians exactly where you are, so you can actually find out what's going on. So this is a way to kind of automatically know if you're in trouble without you even having to touch your phone. Iris will know very soon, and it will start acting on your behalf. The other one is called a dead man trigger, and I can showcase this to you at the end if you would like. You just simply put your finger on the phone. It's a very discreet button. You're actually, the phone looks quite blank under that state. Put your finger on the phone. You walk around as long as you want. Keep your finger on the phone. This is ideal for those short bursts of time where you are exposed, you are vulnerable, you are walking to a car alone at night, for example. Put your finger on the phone. The moment you let go of that phone, it starts a 10-second timer. You need to put in your unique password in 10 seconds, or else the algorithm knows that you are in trouble, which means you potentially, if someone jumps, you just let go of the phone. Within 10 seconds, multiple things will happen. Private security will be en route to your location. They will be there within 5 to 8 minutes. Your camera has now switched on. It is live streaming everything it can see and hear. So evidence is going to the cloud of everything that's happening. So you know help is on the way, and you didn't do anything. You simply let go of your phone. So that is what's existing in Iris right now. The next update will give us something called travel safe mode and jog safe mode. I'll iterate a bit more on that shortly. The final layer of Iris we decided to throw in there was Wearable Technology. It's a button that links to the app. You get the button, you scan it into the app. It's got a unique QR code. That button then links with Iris, and we know that that is you. This button is completely independent from the phone. It's got its own SIM card, GPS, battery, lasts 2 years without a single charge. You press this button, we are en route. So even if your phone battery is dead, or someone gets to you quick enough, someone gets to your phone too fast, this is hidden on your persons, very small, very discreet. You press that button, we're en route. Also ideal for kids who haven't got smartphones. You can give them this button and you can find them at any time. The big picture with this is that currently, I can honestly say, Africa knows less about Africa than America and China know about Africa. We are currently being data mined like crazy through systems like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And this would be us creating our own data for South Africans. And one thing with Iris is that we are not selling this data. We are making it available for all South Africans, because what this does is that it will show us the hotspot zones. It will show us where it is unsafe. Iris is learning. Every time someone presses the button, it starts highlighting that area red. It becomes a heat map. Now, this serves multiple purposes. It's the first of its kind, which will give us live real-time data on where the hotspot areas are. I'm not sure if you guys recall the third quarter of 2019, there was that post office murder in Cape Town. It took almost a year to the date for our police commissioner to tell us, oh, South Africa, these are the 30 gender-based violence hotspots. One would argue that by the time he told us that, it was really redundant. It took him that long to get those stats. However, Iris will give us this in real time. The moment a syndicate starts hijacking in a certain area, or robberies go up here, or assaults go up here, Iris will pick that up in real time, and it will give that data to the people, which serves two purposes. Firstly, private security and SAPS know where they need to be when they need to be there. They can see these things popping up. Secondly, it allows us as South Africans to know where we should not be. Currently, if you overlay this kind of data on your Google Maps, for example, Google Maps shows you the quickest route from A to B. However, most South Africans would want to know the safest route from A to B. This will keep you around those places that you shouldn't be going to. Because remember, once again, Iris will be used not just for GBV instances, but if you witness a hijack or assault, or there's a robbery in front of you, the best thing you can do, switch Iris on, go straight to blue, because blue is now dispatching private security. You've done multiple things at the click of one button, and you're capturing crucial evidence, which is live streamed to a cloud, which will be used to prosecute at a later stage. And there's no need to go through the rest of this, but this is just to explain the technology. And the last one I'll maybe just touch on a bit is the potential benefits to South Africa. And this is how we've managed to get the King involved with this app. We've managed to get Department of Justice, Social Development, all those ministers. Beki Cele himself has also seen Iris. But this was the ripple effects that it will have on South Africa. The first one is tourism, for example. Pre-COVID, tourism accounted for 2.6% or 2.8% of our GDP, which is 139 billion. It's safe to say after the pandemic, if you make this country a safer place, we can see that figure go up again. Even if it's 10% increase, it equates to an extra 14 billion for everyday South Africans. This is tourism money, goes down straight to the people on the ground that need it the most. The other sector is our judicial system that accounts for 20 billion of our budget per annum. If you make court cases quicker, you save man hours. So even, that 20 billion, a lot of it goes to man hours of judges, court clerks, and prosecutors. If you speed up court cases with strong, tangible, irrefutable evidence that was live streamed raw onto a cloud, a court case which would have taken 3 years can be done in 3 weeks if you walk inside there and you play the right video, audio recording. It's done. So even if you're saving 10%, that equates to 2 billion saving per annum. The other one is SAPS. Last year's budget was 93 billion. This year's budget is 111 billion. We're spending more on the cops. The key is to try and make them more efficient with the existing budget. And if they adopt this technology, we do make them more efficient. South Africa has a lot of rural areas which physically don't even have addresses. So if you are in trouble and you can phone them, it's very hard to explain where you are. Blah, blah, blah. It's very hard to explain that. Yet if you have a live location of someone, that makes the response time far quicker from the hour that it takes right now to get to those people. So it's all about efficiency, and adopting technology of this nature, we do truly believe will make South Africa a safer place. And once we've showcased what we can do to South Africa by literally bringing the epicenter of gender-based violence and contact crime, if we can fix South Africa, we are very certain that it will spread to the rest of the world. We already have boots in Kenya, we've got boots in South America and the UK. So yes, that's me and Iris in a nutshell. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Rob. I'm so glad you said that, because actually I have a question. And then if anyone else has a question as well, you're more than happy, you are welcome to ask. I want to ask, Iris seems pretty perfect to me. Like, I know that nothing is at the point where, you're at the finish line and you can't improve in any way whatsoever. But what would you say to young people who are trying to do the same thing? What would you say you have done to help you get to the point where Iris has taken so many things into consideration, and it's been so innovative. And what do you think your strengths have been in your journey leading up until this point?
It's definitely, a lot of it goes back to what Tafara said. He's completely right. You need to get a strong team around you. I mean, when I started off with this thing a year and a half ago, I had a first round of co-founders, and it took so long. We thought, oh man, this is brilliant. We'll have it up and running. We'll have funding 6 months. This thing is done. We're moving. And it obviously took much longer than we thought. It's far more difficult than one would think. It's not like building a house. Building a house, you've got a blueprint, know exactly because it's been done before. You know how long it's going to take, you know how long it's going to cost. If you do something that really hasn't been done before, there's a lot of hurdles along the way, which just slip up the whole project. And I literally stuck at it. One by one, I lost my co-founders, and I just didn't want to give up. I kept going until eventually I had a big break last year, June, when I was basically all alone. I eventually found the right team to work on this thing with me. And I really can say it is your team. I'm in no way a genius. I don't know how to code a single line of coding. I never have and never will write a single line of coding, but I can dream, I can imagine. And I do love working hard. And so I think that's a decent combination. Bring your team together, feed off each other. The right people around you are so crucial. And it just starts growing and developing as you go. And I can honestly say we still aren't there yet. I mean, Iris went live the day before Valentine's Day, but we've never done any PR around it. We haven't announced it to the country. We haven't told the country. I mean, Carte Blanche wants to cover it, but we haven't told anyone it's live because we still want to improve it. We know there's room for improvement. So there's another we're working on, because we just we're like, okay, guys, it's there, but we know we can just get it a little bit better. So we keep delaying the process of actually announcing it. Because we're trying to make it as best as we can, but it's never going to stop. I realize it's never going to stop, because as soon as that version is done, yes, we'll announce it, but then we're going to be like, okay, R&D on this, let's improve there. So it's a lovely process of just, growing with the project and being nimble. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. Does anyone else have a question? And anyone online, if anyone has a question. If
I wanted to ask something, but I feel like the answer might have been in what Rob just responded, but maybe it might be worth asking as well.
Rob, can you hear?
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. Hi, Rob. It's CT here. I'm part of the audience that's here live. I just wanted to ask a question that I feel like you might have slightly answered, but just to pose it again.
Sure.
So you haven't done any PR and marketing, but
I wouldn't say we haven't. We had a huge PR run early December last year. We were on ENCA, Newsroom Africa, all the radio stations in the country, but we were telling them it's coming. So the country knows it's coming, but we haven't actually told them that, okay, now it's on. That's all, yeah.
Okay, I see. Because what I was slightly interested in is if you guys have any details on numbers of users that you've experienced, and some cases that have worked out, and some what kind of demographics of young people or South African people in general are using Iris at the moment, how many people are engaging with the app and finding the tools beneficial.
Yeah, no, so when it came to PR, we outsourced. So we got I think it's called Anza Republic. They handled all that. They handled all those interviews and exposure publicity, but we did switch it on as promised on the time, but we never then went back to all those radio stations and everyone to say that it's on. And reason being is because we don't want too much of an uptake too quickly, because right now we've got about 1,000 users on the platform, which is perfect for testing, because they're giving us that insight that we need to see, okay, where do we improve? Boom, because we got a lot of feedback from them. We actually gave it to about 500 people for free, the full system, just so that we can get the feedback. And rather we slip up with 1,000 users, then announce it to the country that it's live, and then we find an issue there. So we actually kind of happy now to just run this course for about another 2 months, because we're getting that crucial data, and the dev team is split up between South Africa and India, and maybe some are even in Bosnia. So they're always just improving and tweaking. We find more bugs. For example, more phones you have it on, you suddenly find that this phone the certain feature isn't working the way it's supposed to work. So we actually deliberately keeping quiet. I mean, we got billboards up in Joburg. We're not even updating them right now because we don't want people to know it's on. So we're kind of keeping quiet about it right now. We'll announce when we're ready. So we only have about 1,000 people on the platform.
No, that's great. No, it sounds like Tabi said, it sounds like a beautiful, very complete, like well thought out app. So that again, that's why I was interested in seeing like, you know, where it's at in terms of the ground phases, but like that testing it out process of finding the little kinks and learning from, you know, the 1,000 users that you have now before you launch it to the whole country also makes a whole lot of sense.
Thank you, brother. Our main business model behind it is that we are actually giving you this away for free. Modes green, amber, and red are free. So we are actually taking that expense ourselves to allow people to stream onto our server for free. We all know how expensive data is to store, and we're going to keep it there. We let the whole country beam on there. However, your key features like your blue, your safety check-ins, all those other extra bells and whistles, those are connected to private security, which is obviously a huge expense to get them to come out at the click of a button and be at your location. So that is then 59 Rands a month per user. However, our main business model is not B2C, it's B2B. So what we're doing is we're grouping users together. So that's where government steps in to say, okay, there's a community here which is having bad, issues with safety, gender-based violence. We've identified these hotspots, and I've actually got the whole list of them where they want to roll it out, and then give it to the people on the ground for free. And then also it becomes packaged under employee benefits. So companies that have a couple of thousand employees, they then give it to them for free. But now what it does, it drastically reduces the price. So instead of 59 Rand a month a user, and when you group them together, it goes down to 30 Rand a month per user. It makes it far more affordable because you've grouped it. Due to economies of scale, it allows us to drastically reduce the price. So that's our main thing. It's B2B. So that's really where we actually truly see this thing taking off, is doing it in that way, because it makes it much more affordable.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that all sounds fantastic.
Pleasure, bro. Pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me quickly just check the chat to make sure we haven't missed anything. Okay, great. So thank you so much, Rob. Thank you so much for just everything that you have shared with us in terms of your journey, in terms of Iris. You and Safara, I would love it if you guys, connected. I will definitely share each other's details. Just because, you're both doing amazing things. Safara is an incredible human being who is working so hard on his app. So I think that would be really, really amazing for him, and just for you guys to get in touch. That would be really cool. But just in terms of what you've said, I think I've learned so much, things like doing your research, how important that is, having a strong team, enjoying the journey. It's funny that you say that, because the other day I was actually reading something about how it's so hard to enjoy life when you're constantly working towards a certain state. So even with things like this, when we're creating something that's supposed to have impact, I think it's so important to enjoy the journey, enjoy the present, enjoy the challenges that are still there in the moment, and just enjoy the whole process, So I think as young people, that's something that we could really learn a lot from, because I think a lot of us were so focused on 25 when we're rich, 30 when we're, all of that. And I think we've learned a lot from everything that you've said. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Next, we have Wena Moloto. He will introduce himself as well. He is the one who is helping us with the policymaking sector. So he will introduce himself. He will speak to us a little bit, and then we will go on from there. So let's hear from you.
Might have to tilt the camera. I think I'm a bit taller.
Are you? Yeah, just a little.
I could see that this was going to be an issue. So hi everyone. My name is Wena Moloto. I'm 27 years old. My dad is a black South African from rural Limpopo, and my mom is a white American from Connecticut. They met in Zimbabwe when my dad was in exile, and my mom was one of those white liberal ladies that just wanted to make a difference, and so dropped out of college and moved to Zim. Sort of my history, I'm in politics, and so therefore in policy. I started my political career at the University of Pretoria. where I was SRC president in 2017 to 2018. And I think that was really my first introduction to policy. We found once we got into office, for example, and this was really when, you know, gender-based violence was becoming a mainstream topic, you could almost say, inside the higher education space. I hate saying mainstream topic, but it's how, yeah, unfortunately society works. And we found that there was no sexual harassment policy at the university. So there was a harassment policy, but nothing that spoke specifically to sexual harassment and gender-based violence. And so the way that the system was set up was that if a student reported another student for gender-based violence, while the investigation was still going on, those two students would still see each other on campus. They would still sit inside the same classes. And so there was no, I mean, it didn't protect the victim. It was very geared towards the perpetrator. And so when we got into office, we said, this is what we want to change. And we managed to push through the University Council a sexual harassment policy. And so that was really the beginning for me in understanding the power of policy. I then, inside the same year that I became SRC president, became a member of council in the city of Tshwane. So at the time I was 23, I was one of the youngest sort of councillors in a major metro in South Africa, and so it was a opportunity that I jumped at, and one that I've thoroughly enjoyed. So that's a bit of background on me. So then, you know, to jump in, you know, what is policy? But I think that's a very important place to start. Policy really is essentially an outline of what government wants to do. It's almost a framework for how government intends to achieve its goals. And then, so in that sense, it's a bit different to a law, you know. Often laws are, well, not often, laws are used really as a means of, let me say, discipline, as opposed to a policy, which is more based on principle, the route that a government or an organization wants to move in. And so why is policy so important? I was chuckling when Rob was speaking about his app, for example. I believe policy has the ability to fundamentally change society. And so when he was mentioning, you know, the different tiers, you know, green, amber, red, I was thinking to myself, it's a perfect example of the power of policy, you know, because that system stems from robots, you know, your you know, green, and that's impacted the way, you know, all over society, all over the world, the way we see green. I mean, it's not that in the animal kingdom, when you see green, that a zebra will stop, or a zebra will go, and when a lion sees red, a lion will stop, you know. Just that alone, a policy that became a law, fundamentally shaped the way that we operate as a society. And then you see it, you know, even inside an app. And so for me, that's the power of policy. So I was asked to also speak a bit about policy that is relating to gender-based violence currently inside South Africa. I'm going to have to read this. This is the boring part of my presentation. I apologize. So currently, and I'm just going to name two at a national level. The first is the Criminal Law Amendment Act, and the second is the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill. And these are policies that Cyril very recently announced. The first one, the Criminal Law Amendment Act, it aims to expand the scope of the National Register for Sex Offenders, and also increase the time period that an individual needs to stay on that register. And in regards to the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill, it aims at regulating the granting and cancellation of bail, specifically when it comes to gender-based violence, as well as in expanding definition, which I think is a great thing. So it starts speaking about things like coercive behavior, you know, controlling behavior, and including that with inside the scope of gender-based violence. But there are shortfalls, and the two that I'll focus on specifically is that one, policies currently don't aim to fundamentally change society. For me, gender-based violence comes down to us existing inside a patriarchal system. And if you don't have policies that are attempting to change the system, it's not, nothing's going to change. And so I think we focus way too much on punishment instead of prevention. In that sense, from a policy standpoint. So I'm going to mention some of the solutions that I think we need to be pushing as young people in regards to policy inside the country. The first one is communication. I love the hashtag Men Are Trash movement, and I'll compare that to, for example, what happened after the Unene incident, where all over radio, all over the Gautrain station, you would see these hashtags, real men don't rape. For me, that's fundamentally flawed. Real men do rape. And the reality is that by creating this us versus them situation, you allow for people to feel like, rape is specifically just this violent crime. A lot of the times, it's through coercion, which within itself is violent, but there's this narrative that, it must be physically violent. There has to be, tears, there has to be, and a lot of the time that's not what rape is, it's simply somebody not giving consent. And so I think we fundamentally need to, from a policy standpoint, work on our communication regarding gender-based violence. The second one, and as I said, it's about really tackling a patriarchal system. And for me, that needs to be through education. And it's something that I think currently at a policy level, we're failing to do. From a primary school level, we have LO, but we really need to be through that, trying to dismantle, young boys' views on women, because it has to be a societal approach. As I said, it can't just be prevention. We need to really start, it can't just be punishment. We need to be looking at prevention. Then, I think actually that's where I'm gonna leave it, so that we can have our discussion. But I really love the presentations so far. And I'm glad that everyone has availed themselves on a Thursday to have these conversations, because I think they really are so important. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much to all three speakers. I really appreciate all of the wisdom that you have all imparted onto us. I think, as you were speaking, there were so many questions that were coming to mind, and so many things that I would really, really love to just discuss. So I think this is the portion of the session where I would really love to just open up the conversation. But before I do that, does anyone have any questions for Gwena specifically? I have one, but I want to know if anyone else has any. Let me check the chat. Okay. Let me actually put this here just to make it more inclusive somehow. Thank you. Okay, cool. So basically, how I want this session to work is for us to really just tackle, for example, you were talking about how real men do rape, right? That's something I haven't really thought of, if I'm being honest. I've always thought of it as, a real man would never rape. But my question to the three men, the 4, 5 men who are here, I would like to ask you guys, what do you think, especially in the South African context, what do you think makes a real man? What is a real man? So you say that a real man can rape. What makes him a real man? Why is he still a real man?
And this is the question to me.
Yes, and then we'll just go around. It's a very safe space, by the way, for everyone. Last time's conversation was also quite heated. We spoke about things that I think people are often scared to, say out loud, and scared to like ask because we should know this already, or ask because, like, you're supposed to think a certain way, you're supposed to, and I think it links back to something that was said in the last session, related to, for example, what makes someone a good person. It can be a thing of they're a good person because they really are, or are they a good person because they just know what to say at the right time, what to do at the right time, all of that. So it's a safe space, and I want everyone to be as honest as possible. This conversation is going to be shared, but I think that's the power of conversation. The reason I wanted to keep conversation a part of these sessions is because I learned so much in the last session, and it got me thinking about so much in the last session, and it was because of how raw we were and how honest we were in the session. So yeah, so I hand over to you guys. What do you guys think is a real man? And I think we can go around the room. So we'll start with Gwena, and then we can go to Site, and then maybe we can go to Tafara, and then Rob. Lafayette is very behind the scenes in this session. I don't know if you want to say anything as well, but we will come to at the yes.
Sure, anytime.
Great. Okay, so yes, we are all listening.
Hey, that's a tough one. For me, there's no real definition for what a real man is, For me, the reason I raised it as an issue is that I think that it allows for a distance to be created between a rapist and me, for example. So after the devastating situation with the men, a lot of institutions across the country had a period of like 3-4 days where they just closed down, and I remember me and about 5 or 6 of my friends, we came together at a braai, and we said, let's talk about this. So let's not just use this as an opportunity to drink, to go out. We said, let's talk about what's going on inside our country and our role in it. And it was tough conversations because we really had to think to ourselves. When I go to the club, how many times have I been drinking a lot, been feeding women alcohol, and then someone comes home with it? Did they explicitly give consent? And I would consider myself a real man, but in those situations, because as I said, for me, rape is about a lack of consent, full stop. For us, it made us really think to ourselves, what's our role, in sort of this patriarchal system? How are we perpetuating this patriarchal system, and specifically gender-based violence? And so for me, and that's why I said I like the hashtag men are trash versus not, real men don't rape is for me. I think as men, everyone needs to look into themselves and say, how am I contributing to this patriarchal society, the perpetuation of this patriarchal society? But even deeper than that, have my actions, have I raped? To put it as simply as that, or as bluntly as that. That's sort of my feeling around the real men statement.
And can I ask, when you as men were having that conversation, was it just men in the conversation? Do you think that you guys were able to get through to each other in a way that, if women were around, you wouldn't have been as open or as honest? Or do you think it was as productive as it could have been if, women were the ones, complaining to you? Or because I think a lot of the time men shut down because, women are yelling at them or are, and I don't know if it's the right approach. Do you think that, men leading the conversation, what do you think the strength in that is?
It's a tough one. I think to a certain extent, the conversation was easier because it was just men around the braai. Because I think it was a safe space. There wasn't any judgment.
Yeah.
I think we were all really saying, let's look into ourselves
Yeah.
and be better.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't change the past, but you can be better.
Yeah.
And I do think that the conversations can't simply just be men with men. You know, I mean, you need to have a mix generally, but there definitely is a space for men conversating with men. That I also don't think happens enough. You know, most of the time, this is an interesting panel because, well, a group of people, because it seems to be predominantly men. But when we hold anti-GBV talks at university, you'll find that it's 80% women, you know, and men are the perpetrators. And so I think the conversations are important man to man, but it also needs to be a broad conversation. You need to hear from, you know, the victims, which by the system is women,
Yeah.
and take accountability for that.
Yeah. No, thank you. Peter.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Gwena shared. I think to speak to something that you said about how the conversation goes with men and why maybe men shut down when there's talks about, you know, interrogating gender-based violence and what it actually means and what patriarchy actually means. I think a lot of the answers are really like answers that we don't want to hear a lot of the time, you know, and answers that we maybe don't want to acknowledge. And I think that comes from like let's say the idea of a real man and what a real man is. I think it's skewed for all of us. And I think it's skewed because of what patriarchy tells us the world is and what we need to be, you know. So like even I went to St. John's, which is just across the bridge here. It's all boys school. And like some of the conversations that we were starting to have when we really needed to interrogate gender-based violence, like around the time of 2017, 2018, when, like you said, it became maybe a conversation that people couldn't keep ignoring, let's say. Like we were even having conversations that came down to, we have a statue of David in a quad called David Quad, and he's got Goliath's head on the floor. And the way that David is sculpted in that picture, like he's standing with his, I don't even know what weapon he has, but it's not even the weapon that he used to kill Goliath. And Goliath's head is off his body, you know, and he's got these six-pack abs and he's standing there, you know, like a tower of strength. So people, well, some like teachers who were able to invoke conversation said, okay, well, 12, 13, 14-year-old boys are walking past this statue of this picture and they've been told that this is what a real man should be, or, you know, this is the image that one should be aiming for, you know, like boys will be boys, or you know, men don't cry, like just the little like nuances that patriarchy drizzles and says, okay, this is how you should be. It then, once you start peeling those layers back and like, you know, detaching yourself from because those things, as much as they teach us, let's say, negative ideas or give bad pictures in our head, they also protect us, you know, like patriarchy protects men and it shields men and it allows men to, you know, have an overriding say in society. So dealing with that and investigating that, like you said, it's conversations that men don't have enough. And I think it's because it comes with losing a bit of safety. And like even just thinking about the Iris app, it's such an intricate app, and so much of the tools that are in it are beneficial tools. But if you think about it from a user perspective, there's so much that you have to think about as a woman who's using Iris to prevent yourself from being a victim. When in fact, how much of that, you know, responsibility falls on the perpetrator, you know, like you said, like, so you have to be aware that, okay, I'm in a space that's 100 meters from my car. I need to make sure that I'm holding, you know, a button on my phone, because otherwise there's going to be a man who's informed by patriarchy that's just going to, you know. So yeah, I think that's kind of the overarching essence for me, is that the image of a real man it's skewed for all of us. And it's a conversation that we actually don't have enough about, where we need to try and, like, you know, take manhood, or like how we actually need to investigate and be honest with ourselves and have like really, really raw conversations about how the world protects us and how it allows us to brutalize women and perpetuate gender-based violence.
And do you think it's fair to want to? Do you think there's a way to keep men feeling safe? Because I think everyone wants to feel safe, right? Like, I want to feel safe as a woman. Like, I wish I felt safe. I wish I had a system that made me feel safe and feel comfortable. Do you think there's a way to strip men of the patriarchy without making them suddenly feel at risk? Like, do you think there's a way for us to get to the point, and this is for everyone, this is a conversation for everyone online, everyone here, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, do you think, yeah, that's my question.
Oh, I was hearing you, and no, I don't think that that's possible, because if we're gonna want like genuine change, we're gonna want to see a difference, we're gonna see numbers come down, like people are gonna have to get uncomfortable. You know, like if you just think of even the toughest moment in your life or the toughest decisions you've ever had to make, you were incredibly uncomfortable in taking that first step, but I mean, look how it served you. So I think even taking that ideology on that microscopic level in terms of us and our own personal problems and applying it to society at large, I think, yeah, it would really do us some good, because sometimes I feel like when we think of ourselves as a group, what happens, our individual morals or our individual motives get blurred. Does that make sense? And that's when the conversation comes back to what does it take to be a big person? What does it take to stand up for your fellow sisters, to hear someone in pain and actually care? Because even hearing that men are still, you know, where they're at because of patriarchy, I just keep thinking, but we're in an age of information now. You know, so much is made available to you. Like, why is it still a conversation at this point? You know, so yeah, we just need to get other people.
I agree with that as well. Like that, it has to get to a point where men are uncomfortable and men are, you know, the privileges that allow for specifically men to, you know, perpetuate what they perpetuate are stripped away. Like, even if you think about it, like in the context of racism, for example, like again, I feel like the same feeling can be echoed. Like, if a perpetrator, you know, if we're trying to, you know, reconcile a relationship while considering the safety of the perpetrator, you know, the safety of the perpetrator is it's secure, you know, and that safety is causing unsafety for the victim. So once, you know, men are truly uncomfortable in conversations, in dialogues, and really understand how like their like intricate behaviors and things that they thought were just the way that life was supposed to be, until they start learning that, okay, that's actually not how it goes. Like, when you walk past a woman, like, there's actually no reason to put your hand on her, even if you need to walk past. Like, you can literally walk past without touching her, because it makes her feel uncomfortable because you're a strange man. And, you know, like, you don't need to walk that close, you don't need to whistle, you don't need to, you know, like, all of those, like, if you're not appreciating beauty, like, that's not how it's being received, even if you think that, you know, that's what you're doing. So, like, until there's, and those conversations are really uncomfortable for a lot of men to have. So I feel like until that happens, genuine change isn't really gonna, you know.
Yes, sorry. Hi. Yes, Shafara.
Sorry, I'm just having, yeah, I'm trying to like jump between my laptop and my phone, because my phone is where my mic and stuff is. Can you guys hear me, just to check?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think a lot of really good points have been raised, and I thought I'd chime in a little bit. You know, especially with Tavi's question that she just asked now. So for a little bit of context, one of my friends here in Cape Town has started an organization, I think I've shared it with Tavi, called Askulumeni. And the main focus of the organization is obviously around talking, right? What we all do as facilitators, and also the finance portfolio, is we kind of just create opportunities for us to speak to young boys in high schools about the topic of gender-based violence. We explain to them all its intricacies, the nuances, things like catcalling, you know, things such as like partner violence, the fact that as a partner, your partner can still rape you. That's a thing. And you'll be very surprised, as to the surprise. But anyways, that's just for some context, yeah. And what I find incredibly interesting, some of the insight that we get. So since 2020, it started in 2020, and we've had in-person sessions with boys' school since then. I think we had our first in-person session for 2022, like 2 weeks ago. And I find it incredibly interesting because every single time we go, and every single session I facilitate, we often have situations where we'll mention a lot of this stuff. We'll talk about patriarchy, and we'll talk about, we like to use this analogy, the root and then the fruit. So the roots would be catcalling, boys will be boys, dick pics, slipping a drink, slipping something in a girl's drink at the club or whatever. The fruits are obviously sexual assault, rape, all that kind of stuff, unwanted sexual advances. Those are the fruits. And I find it incredibly interesting how this stuff is known. It's not like this stuff is things that go over people's heads. So whenever we mention the word microaggressions, it's a big word, and people are often like, oh, I don't know what that means. Microaggressions, I've never heard of that in my life. And then we talk about how catcalling is a microaggression. Instantly, it's one of those things where someone is like, oh, that's what that is. Yeah, no, that's horrible. That's bad. That's terrible. These are young boys that, bear in mind, have grown up in areas in Cape Town where catcalling is a thing. It's just a regular. You walk down the street and a girl's gonna be catcalled, right? But it's very interesting to me to see that already from such a young age, they perceive this stuff as A, not normal, but B, unacceptable. These are young boys. And so it serves the question, at what point is that perspective altered? At what point is that perspective changed? Then you bring in the things like external factors and whatnot. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say was, and now this is a bit more in line with Tabi's question just now in terms of the patriarchy and how do you strip away patriarchy but still find a way to make men feel safe. And I put safe in inverted commas because we've always been safe. But rather, how do you find a way to make men feel like they're a part of the conversation? And what, again, just going back to some of the insights I've gathered through these conversations with young boys and stuff, what I find is that, we'll play a game called, I call it yes, no, maybe, where we'll say a statement, and then we'll get them to stand in 3 different lines. The one line is yes, if you agree. The second line is no, if you don't agree. And then the other line is maybe, if you are in between. Apologies, let me just reject that. So yeah, maybe if you're in between, yes, if you fully agree with the statement, no, if you completely disagree with the statement, yeah? And we find it interesting. I had a conversation with them and I mentioned, I'd mentioned a statement. I said, men, I think I'm on duty at rest, so apologies, they're gonna keep on calling me for the duration that I'm on duty. But basically—
Sorry, quickly, sorry to disturb you. I just need to excuse myself because I need to run. I've got an appointment.
That is so okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Rob.
Nothing but a pleasure. Hope to link with all of you guys again soon. Thanks for having me. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Hey, Rob. Perfect. Sorted. So yes, we have this game, and I said a statement. My statement was this: men are the main perpetrators of sexual assault in South Africa. Right? That was the statement. We had some boys going into the yes line. They obviously agreed with the statement. Then we had some boys who found themselves in the maybe line. And then we had some boys on the no line. Some boys were standing in the line where they completely disagreed.
Safara,
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I don't know if it's us, but your volume went down. Lafayette, can you hear him?
Yes, I can hear him clearly. So
okay, then it's definitely us.
Better now?
Yeah.
Better now,
okay,
Tabi?
cool. Yeah.
Sure, it's so weird. Like the time where I'm supposed to be somewhere else, I'm wanted everywhere else. It's my apologies, because I'm on duty at rest today and I have to kind of oversee the operations of the building. But anyways, to get back to what I was saying. So yes, we had boys standing in the yes line, boys standing in the no line, and boys standing in the maybe line. And of course, because I've been able to engage with people such as yourselves on this matter, I was like, oh, there are people in the no line. Let's engage them and see see what it is that they have to say. And I asked them, I said, why are some of you in the lower line? The guy said to me, this young boy is like 14, 15 years old. He said to me, yes, men probably are, the main perpetrators, because that's what we see in the news. But boys are also assaulted by women too. And I was like, okay, yes, that's exactly it. Boys are also assaulted by women as well. You get many cases like that. And I was like, okay, that's true. That's very true. But would you agree with, and I said this to him, would you agree with me that it's men who are mainly the perpetrators? And again, he said, yes. The problem is, the reason I don't like engaging with these conversations is because men are made to feel like they are the only perpetrators, not like they're the main perpetrators. And I think for me, that was quite interesting to hear, because I got to thinking and I said to myself, well, maybe the reason why men don't engage is because they're made to feel like they're the root of the problem, not because they're made to feel like they're benefiting from the roots of the problem. Does that make sense? So again, just to use my example, this young boy was saying to me, listen, if I paraphrase, I don't want to engage with this problem. I don't want to engage with this conversation because I've never done anything to anyone, but I've already been made to feel like I am the problem, as opposed to, you know what, I would love to engage because I recognize I benefit from the root of the problem. And I think maybe that is one way in which we could begin to strip away the idea of patriarchy by bringing men into the conversation, by not making them feel like the root of the problem, but essentially making them aware of the fact that they benefit from the root of the problem, which is patriarchy, thereby dividing men from the problem, making sure that they're aware of their responsibility to the problem, but also making sure that they're aware that they're not the cause of the problem, they're merely benefactors of it. And that empowers them to also take part in making solutions to the issue. I'm not sure if that makes sense. I know I speak a lot, but that makes sense.
I love it, Safara. I love it. Never change.
Yes, Tani, can I tap into that? Okay, so one thing that I'll keep mine short, because in the interest of time, because we could go all day on this. But the founder made a very good point. Gender-based violence goes both ways. Yeah, you hear about it's mostly men, but it also goes, like he said, with women against men. But that's very rarely talked about. So first of all, the first question or the first topic was really about what a real man is. Well, a real man, first of all, understands the concept of respect. Okay, respect begin with yourself. That's called self-respect, and also respect for others. So it doesn't matter what a person's background is. It doesn't matter what a person's race is. It doesn't matter what a person's gender is. It doesn't matter what anything about that person other than their personality. And if you cannot respect the person for who they are, then that's where everything starts to go wrong. Everything starts to fall apart. That's where the big impact comes with gender-based violence, because clearly, I'm not speaking from a man or a boy's standpoint. If you don't have respect for yourself, there's no way that you're going to respect someone else. More so, you're not going to respect someone that you consider a weaker sex, like a female, right? And this is coming from a man's standpoint. So when you're talking about being a real man, it all centers around respect, both self-respect and respecting others around you. So you have to start saying to yourself, look, this is my purpose in life. This is what I stand for. This is what I believe in. And if no one else around me believes in this, then I need to leave those people alone. So from a man's standpoint, again, when you're catcalling and doing those things, I always emphasize, think about this. Think about if someone was doing that to someone you love. If someone was doing that to your mother, somebody was doing that to your sister, your cousin, your aunt, someone that you're close to, and someone that you love, how do you think they feel, right? So put yourself in that position. So when you look at it from that standpoint, it makes more sense to you to say, look, this is wrong. We're not supposed to be doing this, because I'm not only being disrespectful to myself, but I'm being disrespectful to the person that I'm conveying that bad behavior to. So in my opinion, it's unacceptable all the way around. So to me, that's what it boils down to, is just respect, self-respect, and respect for others. Simple as that.
That makes sense. You guys are saying very interesting things, and it made me think of, so in the past 2 sessions, something that has come up is, can women be the perpetrators of gender-based violence, right? And it came up because in the first session, we were being taught about how you can have GBV in homosexual relationships, right? So a man can be a perpetrator of gender-based violence against a man, a woman against a woman. And I asked because to me personally, what makes gender-based violence is the fact that it's gender-based, right? And to me, the thing that makes it stand out from all other kinds of violence, be it structural, be it physical, be it whatever, is the fact that you as a person who identifies as that gender is taking advantage of the power that you hold, that you only hold as a result of your gender, right? And it led us to a conversation about, are there situations where women hold the power? Because we're trying to be as honest as possible, right? And think of it from all angles and, just, thoroughly interrogate this. And we were thinking to ourselves, where can women say we are in power because of our gender specifically, right? And Seba came up with the situation of custody battles.
Yeah, custody battles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to just quickly?
Yeah. I think that was probably the only situation I came up with was usually in divorce, obviously, if they have children, there's the custody battles and their full custody. And what happens is women are favored because of the qualities of their femininity. So their softness, their ability to bear children, their ability to connect with infants. That's often seen as the preference, even though that mother may not be the best fit for that child for reasons like maybe addiction, drug abuse, or etc. But there are cases where the woman wins, and it's unfair because obviously the father is a better fit, but obviously he's a man, there's masculinity, and the judge just isn't wired, I guess, to see him as the best caretaker for that child.
Thank you. Yeah, so I bring that up because, two things. Can you guys, as people who went in the past sessions, can you guys think of, in fact, even all of us actually, can anyone think of a situation where, other than that, where women are in power because of their gender specifically? That's the first part. The second part is, do you think we have gotten to a point as a society where we sort of want to classify things as gender-based violence? So we've kind of taken away the other classifications, if that makes sense. Like, we're very quick to say, no, it's gender-based violence, as opposed to just saying it was just a case of violence. Does that exist anymore? Like, is everything gender-based violence? And if so, is it still gender-based violence? Like, I don't know. Yes, Gwenna, and then Seba.
Sorry. With that part, are you like referring to maybe like a bar fight between two men? So the fact that a man can say he can attack another man because, I don't know, there's type of masculinity, toxic masculinity happening there. So is that a form of gender-based violence in itself?
I'm asking. Yes, Gwenna.
Yeah, I think it's a complicated one. So I'll use another example. Is that question often, can a black person be racist?
Yes.
Right? And for me personally, the answer is no. I think that a black person can be discriminatory based on race, but it's different to racism, because for me, racism speaks to societal, power dynamics. So with gender-based violence, for me, it's a different question to say, can a woman sexually assault a man?
Yes.
To me, the answer is yes. But for me, I wouldn't necessarily classify it as gender-based violence. I would classify it as sexual assault, because to me, gender-based violence speaks to the power system, power dynamics. So yeah, that's my belief there.
Okay.
Yeah, I will just want to echo what Gwenna said there. I agree with that completely. Like I think the key, I feel like, to gender-based violence is the power dynamic element. Like a conversation that I had with someone who was a close friend of mine, and my sister and a few other close friends were there, was a conversation around, as a man, if, let's say, for example, your partner or a woman hits you, are you still employing your power dynamics by hitting her back? What is your procedure, in that next step, right? So so like there were different sides of the argument, but that kind of, for me, cleared up the picture of what power dynamics are in my mind, because, and it's a conversation that I've tried to have with a lot of other friends of mine, is I feel like for most of the like guys that I know, like if a woman tries to impose power on you, you are aware that hitting her back is not what you need to do to make sure that you're safe, right? If a woman tries to assault you, there's ways that you can condense the situation without being violent towards her back, because you're a man. So you have that, like you have the power dynamic in your favor already, you know? So like, if you were to, that would like be, I guess, an example. Like if a woman was to hit you, like that would be assault. And if you were then to hit her back, then that can like be an example of gender-based violence, I would feel. Because the odds are skewed in your favor as a man. So, and that's what perpetuates gender-based violence.
And do you guys think there's anything unfair about saying women can't be a perpetrator of gender-based violence? No. Safara, why do you say no?
Sorry, 2 seconds. Just switching over. There we go. Yeah, just switching over to my thing. Again, just testing you can hear me still. Life is good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I think Brenda wrapped it up so well with his can black people be racist question. We used to have so many of these discussions in high school. Sometimes we'd bring it up to upset people. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes we bring up just to get people riled up. Like, no, black people can't be racist. And it's like, no, they can't. But I think Brenda wrapped it up so beautifully, just in terms of saying it goes back to structure, right? The reason why I also agree with Quinn and believe that black people cannot be racist is because there is no structure that allows them to have dominance or power over white people in the way that white people had dominance and power over black people due to the apartheid structure, right? And I think for the most part, that exact same argument can be brought over to this side, isn't it? Yes, black people can be discriminatory. A black person can definitely say some offside things about white people that would not be okay in any instance. In the same way that a woman could hit a man, could spike a man's drink, like what we saw with Cardi B, all sorts of different things. Of course, that could happen. But I think to label it as based on gender, which is exactly what the whole gender-based violence thing speaks to, is that it's an act of violence committed purely because of one's gender and the dynamics between the two. I think it would not be fair to label and act like that as gender-based. Yes, it could be a woman committing an act of violence towards a man, but she's not necessarily doing it because it works in her favor. She's not necessarily doing it because the structure allows her to get away in some instances, or because the structure allows her to exert dominance or power over a man. She might be doing it because of ulterior motives, which are which are perfectly justified, or rather not even perfectly justified, but definitely hold more weight than it being called gender-based violence. For example, drugging a man's drink in order to rob him. I think that's what the situation with Cardi B was when it came out. She was drugging him so that she could take his money. Whereas when a man drugs a woman, it's to exert the power, to be able to take her body as his own and use it as he wishes. That is why it's called gender-based violence. And he does it not because he wants her body, but because he's a man. And what we've seen through conversation is that men feel like they are entitled to the body of a woman, isn't it? And that's exactly what the whole purpose of this conversation is about. So no, I don't think it would be unfair to say that gender-based violence or acts of gender-based violence could only be committed solely by men because of those reasons. I don't think it would be unfair. Not at all, actually, in the slightest.
Thank you. I'm noticing that it is definitely 29 past. So I think we would have to wrap it up just because I know other people have places to be, people to see. But I would like to just wrap it up by just going back to my last question, genuinely just out of curiosity. Did anyone manage to think of something where women are at an advantage because of their gender, other than Siba's example?
I did think of one, but in most respects, it actually is very similar to Siba's example. So I don't know if you guys know this forum called Reddit. but they've got this, they like asking questions on Reddit. And the one thing that they asked on this forum towards men specifically was, has there ever been a time where being a man has worked against you? So it wasn't necessarily the focus on saying, has there ever been a time where you feel like women have had power, but more so, have you ever felt like being a man has not worked in your favor? And one of the many things, but the one that really struck a chord with me was this guy, he says he can't watch his children in the park alone without his wife. Because if he's there by himself watching his kids, the automatic assumption is that he's a pedophile and someone is going to come and ask what's going on. There's been a case where someone is actually, the police were called when this man was watching his children in the park, because the person saw this and thought that this man was a pedophile and was hoping to make a move on his children. So I think maybe to say, so that was the thing. And then he said to himself, but what he finds interesting is whenever he does go to the park as a single dad, the case is, it's perfectly normal to see single mothers in the park watching children. In fact, no one bats an eyelid. No one asks any questions because, again, like Seba said, the case has been made in terms of how women are naturally caregivers, both in the eyes of social constructs, but also in the eyes of the law. It's perfectly normal or perfectly acceptable for someone to say that a woman is a caregiver in the eyes of the law, and people say, yes, that's exactly how it is. So I think, really just in respect of how people react, or rather how people interact with others, to some respect, I would say in that regard, women have power. But again, I wouldn't say that it's power that disadvantages anyone in the way that men have power that disadvantage women. And I think that's the key point here, is even when you look at the job spectrum, men are able to get more jobs or offered more jobs because they are men. And through that, women are disadvantaged. Whereas me, as a single father, not being able to watch my kids because people think I'm a pedophile does not I'm not disadvantaged by a woman as a result of it. So I think that's really key to remember.
Thank you so much. I could go on forever, so I should wrap it up now. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who tuned in online. Thank you to everyone who made it all the way here. I really appreciate it, from Cape Town, from Houston, Texas, from Pretoria. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who made it here. I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Lafayette, enjoy the rest of your morning. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Bye.